Hey everybody, we're gonna tie the Trude in as close to the original as I can determine, and the pattern recipe here comes from J. and Leonard's Flies, which was published in 1950. But obviously, the Trude pattern has tons and tons of variants, and may in itself be a variant as well. So squirrel tail is the wing, and the body is red wool and ribbed with silver tinsel, and then a brown red hackle in the front. The main reason to tie this fly and talk about this fly is to talk about hair wings and the origin of hair wings. The origin is not very well documented and probably almost impossible to determine. Andrew Hurd has a great book called The Fly, and he talks about it in the latter portion of the book. We do know that in the United States in the 1880s, 1890s for sure, bucktails were being used for bass flies. You don't see hair wing flies in Mary Orvis Marbury's book. Most of the flies from that time period, both in the UK and in the United States, in the English traditions, were very feather based during the Victorian era. Obviously, with the fashion for crazy hats that women wore with all kinds of feathers, we have the possibility of acquiring all kinds of feathers. But that starts to diminish as we get into the late 1800s, particularly in the United States. It was a little bit longer available in the UK, but in the United States for sure not. But a lot of this stuff was done by backwoods people, outdoorsmen who didn't write books, didn't document stuff. We for sure know of Native Americans using hair in all kinds of forms for lures and whatnot for fishing. And obviously, I'm sure Europeans based peoples saw this and interacted with them and adopted some of the ideas. But the Trude is kind of considered to be the beginning point of the hair wing, at least in terms of documentation. And it's credited around the end of the 1800s, early 1900s. And the gentleman who's supposed to be responsible for it is named Carter H. Harrison, and he's from Chicago, and he was out in Idaho at a ranch owned by Alfred Trude, and so the fly was put together as a gag supposedly back then, but became named the Trude after him. But shortly after, the Trude kind of spread, and some important tyers by the name of Bill Beatty, Cliff Wyatt, and Dan Bailey, grabbed onto it and began to do some dry fly versions with it. And but we know hair was played with even by Theodore Gordon back in 1880 with his Bumble Puppy and other patterns. We even have some Scottish people playing with it in the late 1800s and so forth. So not a lot of great documentation, but it seems to be the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, the hair wing starts to become a thing. And it really moves into salmon patterns by a gentleman by the name of Colonel Lewis Thompson, really starting around 1928. And then the whole hair wing world of salmon fly tying becomes a thing. But this pattern is really important in that sort of documented history, and then starting in the 1920s and forward, we're really able to sort of more document this. We know that in the Ausable and in the Catskills, we have hair wings happening. We know this from Fran Betters talking about his father in his books, and fishing with Ray Bergman and so forth, and some of those guys using hair wings that led to the haystack and other hair wing patterns that Fran eventually developed. We also know about Lee Wolf fishing both in the Catskills and in the Adirondacks on the Ausable, working on the Wolf series of flies and hairwings and upright hairwings, and of course his later friendship with Dan Bailey, who was influenced by the Trude, and who knows, what happened there in terms of further development of the hairwing. But really, the 1930s, we start to see it a little bit more and more. And then, obviously, World War II probably interrupts a lot of stuff in terms of book writing and documentation of things, but picks up afterwards. And we know at that time from Bob Wyatt, who grew up in Alberta, Canada, hairwings being popular at that time period already. Him seeing it as a kid and established, by some elders that he fished with, and obviously fast forward, a little bit further there to the end of the 50s, 57, and you have Al Troth with the El Caricatus, and really that one becoming popular once he moves out west, and the fly begins to be sold, and articles written about it and so forth, and so kind of the explosion in the hairwing. And it makes sense. Local material, effective material, cheap material, and a lot of these exotic feathers becoming harder to get and eventually becoming illegal as these birds become endangered and expensive. And so here we are, the Trude. One on a long shank, one on the short shank, and really beautiful idea, beautiful pattern, and hope you enjoyed it. Take care.